Chapter 5. Get Your Freak On. When I got home, I let Spectre out of his cage and led him into the kitchen. You couldn't even tell that someone had barfed black ooze everywhere. Want a fried bologna sandwich, Spectre? He just ran across the floor to chase a ball. Guess he wasn't hungry. I got the bread and bologna out of the fridge and put a skillet on the stove. Once the sandwich was sizzling in some butter, I flipped on the kitchen radio. Guess which song was playing? Heal the Ruins Left Inside You. I set down my spatula and backed away from the stove. I wasn't sure what to do. Hearing that song again, I felt trapped. Luckily, it ended and the DJ started talking. That was Low Shoulder, the local band who became the unlikely heroes of the tragedy in Devil's Kettle last night. What? Heroes? I don't think so. I turned off the stove and picked a plate up off the dish rack as I listened. Eyewitnesses say the boys helped numerous people escape the inferno, risking their own lives in the process. That's rock and roll with a conscience, ladies and gentlemen. And there you go. That's why I made a big deal earlier, telling that part of the story. Those jerks hadn't helped anyone but themselves. I put the sandwich on the plate and slowly cut it on a diagonal. Had everyone in this town gone insane? Was I the only one who really remembered what happened that night? Had a lot of requests for that one. And guess what? We are honored to have Low Shoulder in the studio right now. How are you holding up, guys? Oh, this was going to be good. I took a bite of hot bologna and chewed slowly as Nikolai answered. We're maintaining, man. It's not easy, but the real heroes are the people of Devil's Kettle. I hope we can convey 1/10 of their heart and spirit on our upcoming album. I turned off the radio. I couldn't listen anymore. I sat down and dropped the rest of my sandwich on the floor. Spectre reappeared and started nibbling. Suddenly, I didn't feel well at all, sick to my stomach. Maybe I really was getting the flu. My mom walked into the kitchen in her pajamas. Mom, I didn't know you were awake. I just had one of my night terrors. She looked around the kitchen, blinking. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so technically you had a day terror. Right. I'm all mixed up since I started working swing shift again. Mom sat down on an orange and green vinyl chair at the table. She looked so tired. Her bobbed hair was sticking out all over. There was more gray in the dishwater blonde than there used to be. What did you dream about? I asked. I dreamed some bad people were trying to nail you to a tree with hammers and big stakes. Just like JC. She crossed herself. Mom still went to church. But I didn't let them get my girl. I'm a tough mama bear. I smiled at her. She was the best mom, protecting me even in her dreams. I can take care of myself, I reassured her. Ever since my dad had left, I pretty much took care of myself. I knew it was hard enough for her to get through the workday. Just you wait, Mom said. One of these days you're going to be crying for me and I won't be there. She grabbed one of my hands and squeezed it. I hated to do this to her when she was so worn out, but she had to know. Hey, Mom, did you get a chance to catch the news after you clocked out this morning? She watched Spectre drag the bologna out of the sandwich and off to the corner as I told her all about it. Well, I told her there was a fire and that people died. No need to worry her with all the details. After Mom went back to work that night, I sat in my room and tried to read a comic book Chip had lent me. But mostly I shoveled cookies into my mouth. After feeling sick earlier, I suddenly felt much better and was starving. I was eating so fast I was barely chewing. I could have been eating cedar chips from the front yard, and I wouldn't have tasted the difference. I emptied the bag of cookies and shook it out onto my desk, looking for any chocolate chips I might have missed. My cell phone buzzed. It was Jennifer, with her radio blasting an obnoxious top 40 song so loud that I could barely hear her as she said, "I feel so scrumptious." Goody for you. You know, like when you kiss a guy for the first time and your whole body feels like it's on vibrate. Yeah, it's that good. Unbelievable. That's nice. Me? I'm still kind of depressed about, you know, the giant smoldering funeral pyre in the middle of town. MoveOn.org, needy. It's over. Life's too short to mope over some white trash pig roast. That's sweet, Jen, I snapped. I just tell it like it is. Besides, you should be happy for me. I'm having the best day since, like, the calendar was invented. Then she giggled like a crazy person. Something was seriously wrong with her. Someone had taken my best friend and replaced her with an android. My call waiting went off, saved by the beep. That's my other line. Blow it off, she said. Any other day and I probably would have, but she was pissing me off. I'll just be a sec. Boo, I'm crossing you out. I ignored her and clicked over to the other line. It was Chip, and he sounded freaked. I need to see you right now, he cried. There was a ton of banging and piano keys jangling in discord in the background. Must be his little sister, Camille. She could be so annoying. I can barely hear you, I shouted. Camille is playing piano, he explained. Ha, I was right. Then I heard him tell her to knock it off, and she told him to knock it off. Kids. Can you meet me at McCollum and 10? He said into the phone. 15, I told him. Then I clicked back over as his sister continued to yell. Jen, I have to go. I'm a god, she said with glee. I did not have time for this kind of crazy. Okay, but I have to meet Chip at McCollum Park. You know, Chip's looking cute to me lately. Tell me, is he packing some serious inches? What's the story down there? Oh my God. I absolutely could not deal with Jennifer taking an interest in Chip. It was the only thing that was mine and not hers. I gotta go, I said, and I hung up on her. I sat for a minute, praying that she forgot about Chip and just left him alone. Then I jumped up and grabbed a sweater. 10 minutes later, I was in the park. There was a volleyball court and an open lawn area, plus a gravel parking lot. The woods surrounded it, and the trees made it very dark at night. It was a popular makeout spot, but Chip hadn't sounded horny on the phone. I climbed up the little hill at the back of the lawn, and at the top I could see that something was going on down below in the neighborhood. There were tons of police cars with their lights swirling, and a big area was tied off with yellow police tape. Chip was standing there, staring down at the cop cars. I suddenly realized what I was seeing. Why are there cops at your house? I asked, grabbing his arm in a panic. His arm was solid. I told my brain, Chip is here. Chip is safe. Don't panic. They're not. They're at Jonas Cazel's house. Oh, it was Jonas. Well, that was normal, actually. I relaxed a little. What, did he try to sell fake peyote to 8th graders again? No, needy. Chip choked up a little. He was murdered. My grip on his arm tightened again. What? Ow, murmured Chip as he took my hand off his arm and held it. He took a deep breath to steady himself and then told me what he knew. Someone ripped Jonas limb from limb in the woods behind the school and ate parts of him. 8 parts of him? I echoed in shock. Someone ate Jonas Cazel? Who would do that? I don't know, whispered Chip. It just happened after school. No one's supposed to know yet, but my dad went over there and talked to the cops. Jonas's mom went catatonic or something. She's just staring out the front window like a zombie mannequin robot statue. Now that he said that, I could kind of see a shape in the Cazel's front window. This was too much. This can't be a coincidence, I said firmly. Chip looked at me. What do you mean, Needy? A fiery death trap last night, and now a cannibal psycho takes down the biggest guy in school? Come on. Don't get spooky on me, babe, said Chip. And he did look spooked, but I was getting angry. Come on, Chip. Most small towns have something gruesome happen, like once every decade, maybe. Devil's Kettle gets 2 nightmares in 24 hours? It's freak-tarded. What? Do you think it's like supernatural? I shook my head. I don't know. I'm extremely intelligent, but obviously I don't know everything. I gave him a half-hearted smile and shrugged. Well, the bad luck's got to be over now, right? It can't get any worse, right? Obviously it can't. It can't. I mean, you agree, right? There won't be another victim. Chip was seriously freaking out all of a sudden. You're shaking, I scolded him. I'm cold, he said, getting hold of himself. It's very cold out here. Trying to lighten the mood a little, I offered him my sweater. It's pink, he protested. Pink is cool, I told him. Rap guys wear pink. Now I was shaking too. We weren't making ourselves feel better. We were scared. Chip pulled me close and kissed me. As he held me, I tried to take some comfort in his arms, but it wasn't going to work. I knew in my bones that something much, much worse was coming. Chapter 6. Booty Call Dropout. The next week, we had a candlelight vigil at the remains of Melody Tavern. The whole town was there, holding candles stuck through Dixie cups. The orange construction fence the police put around the charred rubble became the tackboard for a shrine. White crosses, buckets of flowers, teddy bears, and photos piled up against the plastic. It was as if Princess Diana had been inside the bar. Jennifer didn't show, and my mom had to work. Chip and I stayed in the back of the crowd, and honestly, we didn't stay that long. The mourners started singing that damn song, and I just couldn't listen without wanting to hurl. And the stars will remind you. They also had a funeral for Jonas. I wasn't going to go. It wasn't as if I were friends with Jonas, and I didn't want to be one of those grief groupies sobbing about someone they didn't even talk to when they were alive. But Chip was his neighbor, and he wanted me to go with him for moral support. I shouldn't have worried, though. Practically the entire school turned out for it. It wasn't a very private affair. We heard that Mr. Wroblewski was the one to find Jonas's body. He was sitting right up front, crying like a baby. Poor Mr. W. He was a very sensitive guy. Then we all went back to school. The days marched on as usual, but most of us were too numb to enjoy ourselves. Most of us. Jennifer still strutted the halls of Kettle High like a queen. She was technicolor to our gray. Picture her in a hot pink hoodie with hearts all over it, heart-shaped pink earrings, cute little anime panda keychain dangling from her jeans. It was like Barbie Jennifer, except, the brunette version of Barbie, the one they never make as many of, so they're more rare. Kids at school stuck flowers through the vents in Jonas's locker and left more teddy bears on the floor. Eventually, the flowers died, but no one took them away. The withered blooms just hung there, moldering. The police still hadn't found anyone to arrest for his murder well into March. To the rest of the world, we were famous. Devil's Kettle was finally on the map. Our one and only bar had burned to the ground, and our linebacker was someone's snack pack. The whole country got a huge tragedy boner for us, and every single newspaper ran headlines about our grisly blaze and cannibal killer. There was a cameraman and newspaper reporter on every corner outside of school and around town. America couldn't get enough of the local yokels crying for the cameras. After about a month, I noticed that Jennifer wasn't looking so shiny anymore. I had been ignoring her for the most part. I was just too weirded out by her behavior after the fire. But one day in bio, I really looked her over. I could see that her skin seemed gray, and she was thinner than normal. Sickly thin. There were huge circles under her eyes. I started to think that maybe she had a heart after all. Maybe the tragedy was finally weighing on her. "I'd like to make an announcement," said Mr. Wroblewski. "As you all know, this is the 1-month anniversary of the tragedy at Melody Lane and also the murder of Jonas Cazell." Jennifer was wearing her purple flag team uniform, leaning on the table, and holding her head in her hands. Boring, she groaned, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. Are you okay? I whispered. Mr. W. cleared his throat. As I was saying, Needy and Jennifer, I finally have some good news to share with all of you. The members of the rock and roll group Low Shoulder have decided to extend a helping hand to our community. The rest of the class started murmuring excitedly. Everyone had become major fans of those creeps, like, overnight. Chastity was sitting in front of me wearing a Low Shoulder t-shirt, and now she was all sitting up straight, snapping to attention like she was joining the Low Shoulder ROTC. As you know, their song, Through the Trees, has become our unofficial anthem of unity and healing. So they're going to release it as a benefit single. 3% of the profits will go to local families who have been affected by loss. The other morons in the room were already whispering to each other, as if Santa Claus was coming to town. I was not so impressed. What about the other 97%? I asked. Excuse me? Mr. W. blinked at me blankly. The other 97%. I mean, that's just crass, right? I looked around, but no one was getting it. Crass? It means greedy, exploitive, scummy. Am I the only one who does the vocab drills? Yes, answered Mr. Robluski. Chastity turned around and sniffed at me. Low Shoulder are American heroes, Needy. No, they're not. I was there, Chastity. They didn't actually help anyone escape the fire. I don't even know how that rumor got started. Rumor? She cried. Rumor. It's true. It's on Wikipedia. I looked over at Jennifer for backup, but she had put her head on the table and was totally tuned out. When the bell rang, I followed her into the hallway. No offense, but you look kind of tired, I said to her. Is everything all right? No, I feel like boo-hoo. My skin is breaking out. My hair is dull and lifeless. It's like I'm one of the normal girls. I tucked some of my own normal hair behind one ear. Are you PMSing or something? I asked her. PMS isn't real, Needy. It was invented by the boy-run media to make us seem crazy. I just peered at her closely through my glasses. She really did look like crap. Don't look at me like that. I'm fine, she said. It's just wearing off or something. Wearing off? An idea occurred to me that could explain everything. Are you on pot? No, just forget that I said anything. Colin Gray walked up to us and said hi to me. He was wearing a purple hoodie with black stripes. Even the gods in our town wore hoodies. It was the unofficial Devil's Kettle uniform. Then he nervously looked at Jennifer and squeaked out a hi to her, too. Hey, Colin, she answered. Can I copy your English homework? I never finished Hamlet. Does he sleep with his mom? I was stunned. First, Jennifer had never spoken to Colin before. Ever. Second, she always copied my English homework. No, I don't think so, Colin answered her. Actually, I sort of wanted to ask you something. Oh, you want to know if I'll go out with you? No. Well, yeah. How did you know? He fidgeted with his black leather cuff. I could not believe this conversation was taking place. I had to be dreaming. I just looked back and forth from one to the other in disbelief. Just go ahead with the pitch, Jennifer prompted him. He took a breath to steady himself and then went for it. Well, we've been having a lot of fun in class, you and I just thought maybe we could go to a movie or something. There's a midnight showing of Rocky Horror at the Bijou next weekend. I don't like boxing movies, said Jennifer. Colin started to correct her. It's not... Oh, never mind. He saved himself just in time and backed away. He hurried down the hallway, all rejected. That was random, I said. I'm used to guys asking me out, she said with a shrug. Obviously, but I was still in shock that Colin had asked her out. I always thought he was kind of into me, honestly. And since when does a goth kid get up the nerve to ask out the flag team captain? Colin's a really nice guy, I said cautiously. He's into maggot rock. He wears nail polish. My balls are bigger than his, she said dismissively. Well, I think he's really cool, I said, defending him before I could stop myself. She looked at me, suddenly interested. You do? She asked. She looked down the hallway at his retreating figure. Suddenly she shouted, "Colin, wait!" He stopped and turned around. "Hey, why don't you come by my place tonight?" she called out. "I just got Aquamarine on DVD. It's about this girl who's like half sushi or something." His face lit up. It was kind of weird to see him smile. "Great," he said. "Okay." "I'll text you my address," she said. "Cool." Then Colin ran away before she could change her mind. I was fuming. I could not believe the nerve of this chick. She didn't care about Colin. She just wanted to claim him as her own. She didn't want me to have him. Chip appeared behind me and put his arm around my shoulders. I jumped in surprise. I had been so focused on the Looney Tunes unfolding before me, I hadn't heard him walk up. "Hey." "Hi, Chip," said Jennifer, still in flirt mode. I put my arm around Chip's waist and pulled him closer. "Ugh, get a room," she said, and then walked away. My shoulders sagged in relief. "Talking to your friend, Colin Gray, again?" asked Chip. "No, he was just asking Jennifer out on a date." Chip looked relieved, which made my heart leap. He really did love me. There was no way Jennifer could take him from me. I gave him a squeeze. "Are you coming over tonight?" he asked. "Sure, I'd like that." "I went to Super Target and bought condoms," he whispered proudly. I raised my eyebrows at him. Not that that has anything to do with you coming over." "Sure, Chip, but it was okay, as long as he only bought them for me." That night, I was bobbing on Chip's waterbed, gently rolling with the waves. Chip's room was really cozy. I felt safe there. The walls were wood paneling, well, fake wood paneling. He had Rock Band posters everywhere. I leaned back on the brown corduroy headboard and lazily threw a dart at the dartboard. Chip reached over to the wall and plugged in a fragrance thing. "It's for ambiance," he explained. "It's Jammin' Jasmine." Then he leaned in and kissed me, making the bed bob me up into his nose. I steadied us and kissed him again. "My mom has holiday scents, too, if you're interested," he mumbled. "No," I said. "This is nice." It wasn't too long before Chip's shirt was off and I was down to my plain white bra. He pulled out a fluorescent orange condom. I looked at the wrapper. "Slippery swirl," I read off the package. "It's supposed to make it feel good for the girl," he said sheepishly. He was such a sweetie. "Cool," I said, and kissed him again. As things progressed, I am not sharing all the details. That's private. I started to feel really weird. I hungered for him, but it was not a good, sexy kind of hunger. It was kind of feral, and I felt sort of violent or something. It was like I was possessed by someone else. I clutched him so hard my fingers dug into his skin, and I started to cry. I felt totally under someone else's control. I suddenly pulled Chip closer and bit him on the shoulder. Hard. He winced and pulled back. "What? Am I hurting you?" he asked with concern. I started weeping, then moaning. It was like an out-of-body experience. I had no idea what was happening to me, and I couldn't stop it. I started to see things. Black ooze running down the walls, coming in the windows, spines growing out of it, skulls, demons. It was like the worst acid trip you could possibly have. I mean, I think it was. It's not like I've done acid. Anyway, I was seeing my own private horror movie. I saw people burning, then I screamed. I frantically rubbed my eyes, and Chip started shaking me. "Needy, what's wrong?" I was still screaming. My voice was wearing out, and my screams were getting ragged and hoarse. I struggled out of the bed and started to put my clothes back on. I felt like I was choking, and I put my hands on my throat. I was really worrying Chip at this point. "Is it something I did?" he asked. Do you need more foreplay?" Poor guy thought he was the one making me sick, but the truth hit me all at once. It was her. I moved toward the door. "Needy," he cried. "I have to go," I rasped. I sounded like an 80-year-old smoker lady with 20 cats. "I'm sorry, I just feel like something terrible." "You feel?" Chip looked totally lost. "What does that even mean? We don't have to keep going. Hey, I'm worried about you." He reached for me, starting to get out of bed. I held up my hand to stop him. "I'm sorry, Chip. I'm so sorry. Everything is just wrong." I ran out of his room, leaving the poor guy naked. I jumped into my mom's tiny foreign car, slamming the door shut. My hand was shaking so much it was hard to get the key into the ignition. I finally started the engine and the radio blared to life. That damn song was playing again. "We'll meet again." I beat the dashboard with my fists. "Fudge, fudge, Mabel, fudge," I screamed. I was hysterical and shouldn't have been driving anywhere, but I put the car in gear, punched the gas with my foot, and squealed away from the curb. The street was completely black. Trees flashed in my headlights as I careened down the road. I wiped tears from my eyes and took a deep breath. I tried to focus on the lines in the road and staying between them. Something bright suddenly appeared from the shadows, and the image seared itself inside my brain. Off to the right, under the trees, a figure emerged and stood on the curb. It was Jennifer, pale, in a white tank and jeans, with blood covering her chin and chest. She flashed a ghoulish smile. I shrieked and jerked the steering wheel to the left, swerving across the road. The back end fishtailed around and went into a ditch. I hit the gas, trying to get out, and risked glancing at the windshield to look back across the street. She was gone. I was sweating with panic. What the hell had I just seen? Was it real? I hit the gas again. The engine revved, but my tires spun in the dirt. I shifted to neutral, thinking someone had told me to do that for some sort of car emergency, but it didn't do anything. I put it back into drive and looked up just in time to get the heart attack of my life. The empty road glistened in the moonlight. Everything was a little wet and misty. A blur came out of nowhere as Jennifer came flying toward the windshield like some sort of demented giant bat or moth woman creature. Her arms were outstretched and her mouth open in a yell. With a seismic whomp, she smashed into the windshield, shattering the safety glass. Then she crouched there on her hands, grinning at me through the spiderweb of cracks, grinning with bloodied teeth. She was a banshee, a harpy, a bat out of hell. She was anything but a 17-year-old girl. I heard an alarm blaring in the distance, but I realized it was my own voice, screaming in terror. The tires finally bit into the ground with a jerk, and the car reared up out of the ditch. Jennifer tumbled off the car and into the road. I roared down the street and didn't look back. I was shaking so hard the car kept swerving back and forth. The radio had been on the whole time. "That was, of course, Low Shoulder. They're going to be playing a benefit concert in Devil's Kettle next month. Talk about giving back to the community. Generous guys, I tell ya." Someone needed to murder that DJ. Seriously. Chapter 7. Dolls in the Sandbox. I burst into my dark, unlit house. "Mommy? Mommy? Please be home!" But of course, she wasn't. She had totally called this one. I was crying for her, and she wasn't there. I sank to the floor in the kitchen and curled up into a ball. I couldn't stop sobbing. I finally wore myself out enough to quiet down and think about this crazy shit. I'd always been able to feel what Jennifer feels, just never so intensely before. I must have been feeling her when I was with Chip. There was no other explanation for it. But where did that emotion come from? What had happened to her? Why was she all bloody again? Where was she now? Had I just hit and run over my best friend? Was this my fault now? Was she dead? A memory popped into my head. One time when we were little, we were in her backyard playing dolls in the sandbox. "I'll be perfect prom Betty, and you be her," Jennifer commanded, handing me a naked doll who was missing an arm and whose hair had been hacked off. "Why do I have to be ugly Ashley?" I asked. "You can be ugly Ashley or Kevin. Choose," she said, leaning back on her hands to wait for my decision. But she put her hands down a little too emphatically. "Ow!" she cried. "Damn!" She tried to swear like a grown-up, even when she was 5. "What's wrong, Jennifer?" I asked her. She held up one hand, and there was a thumbtack stuck in it. We had been stabbing them into the doll's ears and using them as earrings. I grabbed her hand and slowly pulled the tack out. Her hand kept bleeding, so I stuck it in my mouth and sucked. It's what I always did with my boo-boos, so I figured it would work on her, too. I gave her hand back to her. "Better. We should get a Band-Aid, though." Jennifer was quiet for a second. Then she spoke very solemnly. "We're sisters now, you know." I nodded. "Don't tell my mom about this. She'll make me get a shot." "I never tell on you," I said. My eyes flew open. Had the blood given us a connection? This was all so weird. It required more thinking and less crying. I peeled myself off the kitchen floor and staggered upstairs to my bedroom. I peeled off my pants and sweater and fell into bed. I lay my head on the pillow. My mind kept churning. Then there was a sudden voice in my ear. "Hi." I bolted upright and turned on my bedside lamp. In the soft glow, I could see Jennifer in bed beside me. She was wet from a shower, to wash off the gore, I guess. She was wearing one of my t-shirts. I screamed and jumped out of bed, pulling the covers with me. "Enough screaming already. You're such a cliché," she said. She was casually leaning against the headboard, as if she lived there. "Get out," I yelled. "But we always share your bed when we have slumber parties," she said with a wink. Suddenly, I was just too tired to fight anymore. And she was right. I had to stop screaming so much. I slowly sank back into the bed. What was I supposed to think? One minute Jennifer is covered in blood, flying through the air. The next, she's all fresh-faced and in my room. I just wanted my best friend back. She reached out and tenderly touched my cheek. "See? I don't bite," she said. I was trembling. She folded me into a hug to her chest. I could feel her BFF heart pressing into my cheek. I had mine on, too. I didn't know what to do. "Is that my Evil Dead shirt?" I asked. "Shh," she whispered. She pulled my face up and touched my lips. I felt mesmerized. It was like the same voodoo spell Low Shoulder had cast on the crowd at Melody Lane. She leaned in and kissed me. Her lips were softer than chips. I jerked away and shook myself out of it. "What the Fuddruckers is happening?" "Whoa," she said. "I've never heard you drop the F-bomb before." I saw you. The car, Slow down, tardy slip." She was mocking me. "I'm calling the police," I announced. "Go ahead, narc me out. I've got the cops in my back pocket. I'm doing a cadet, remember?" Right. Roman Duda was doing her. Nothing in this town was sacred. "What do you want?" I asked her in exasperation. "I want to explain some things to you. You've already seen too much, and besides, best friends don't keep secrets, right?" She actually looked serious. I nodded, unable to speak. I could not imagine what she was going to tell me that would explain all the total weirdness. "You know the night of the fire?" she asked. "I got pretty messed up. I almost died." She paused for a moment and then just blurted it out. "You know those guys in Low Shoulder? Totally evil. They're basically agents of Satan with awesome haircuts. I figured that out as soon as I got into their molester van." Typical Jennifer. It didn't occur to her until after she was locked in their van that hot guys were not nice. Chapter 8. Sacrificial Lane. So, here's what happened, according to Jennifer. You can decide if you believe her. I wasn't sure at first, but now I'm convinced it's the truth. Cut back to the night of the fire. Jennifer, scraped and freaked out from her brush with death, was huddled in the back of the van. Nikolai was driving. No one was saying anything. She just listened to the tires crunch over gravel. "Guys, where are we going?" she asked. "The woods," said Nikolai cheerfully. "The woods?" she echoed. Like, to party or something? Sure, sang out Nikolai. Party in the woods, everybody. The other guys snickered. Jennifer looked around the walls of the van and realized there was stuff painted on it in glow-in-the-dark paint. Goat heads, pentagrams, and strange writing. They turned a corner and some books slid across the floor to her feet. Spells and incantations, summoning the beast, and black mass. Jennifer jumped up and grabbed the door handle, but the drummer grabbed her ankles and yanked her back down. Are you guys rapists? She yelled. You wish, said Nikolai with a smile. She struggled, but the drummer was holding her down. The drummer asked the other guys if she was even a virgin. Jennifer misunderstood, the same way I had back in Melody Lane, thinking they were looking for a slutmobile to ride. Neither of us had comprehended that they wanted a virgin, because really, who wants one these days? Virgin sacrifice is so over. Anyway, she lied to them, too. Yes, of course I'm a virgin. I've never had sex ever. I don't even know how. So maybe you should find some other girl who does. No how. I told you, Nikolai said smugly. These small-town girls are so high and mighty. My high school girlfriend, Amy, she told me she wanted to wait until marriage. Turns out she was just waiting for someone with a better car. Bitch. He laughed maniacally. Dirk looked a little freaked. That sucks, man, he said. Dirk, I didn't ask for your opinion, yelled Nikolai. The van squealed to a stop. The guys piled out, and Nikolai grabbed Jennifer's arm and held on. They walked into a clearing in the woods, and he looked up at the moon. Waxing moon, just like the ritual says. You the man, said the drummer guy. The four of them surrounded Jennifer and just stood there like statues in the moonlight. Even though she was freaked, Jen thought they looked pretty sexy. But then Nikolai head-butted her. She totally wasn't expecting her skull to be mashed by his gourd, and she yelled as she fell to the ground. She saw stars. Nikolai rubbed his head. I've always wanted to do that, but I didn't know it would hurt. Dirk looked a little worried. I don't know if we should go through with this, he said. I knew that guy wasn't so bad. Nikolai shut him down. You're kidding me, right? Dirk, do you want to work at Moosewood Coffee forever? I've had it with 50-cent tips and cleaning the bathroom every 4.5 hours and sleeping with girls who work at Costco, okay? I'm done. Dude, was all Dirk said. And he gestured toward Jennifer on the ground. Her vision was clearing and she tried to stand up. Do you want to be rich and awesome like the guy from Maroon 5? Or do you want to be a huge suicidal loser? Dirk looked sad. Maroon 5, he admitted. Boo, Dirk sucks after all. Then grow a pair and fetch me the ritual. Nikolai noticed Jennifer moving around and grabbed her arm again, his fingers practically burying themselves in her flesh. Dirk went back to the van and sifted through the books in the back until he found a piece of paper. He brought the single sheet back to Nikolai. That's it? Asked one of the other guys. What? I found it online, explained Nikolai. The guys helped Nikolai drag Jennifer over to some rocks that they used as a sort of altar. She realized later they were right next to the waterfall, that water ride to hell. Guess there is a reason it's called the Devil's Kettle. She tried to dig her feet in, but there were too many of them pulling her. Jennifer was still groggy from the headbutt, too, but she struggled again anyway and screamed for help. Dirk slapped her. 3 of them held her down while Nikolai read from the paper. We come here tonight to sacrifice the body of... He paused, unable to remember her name. Of this towny bitch from Devil's Kettle. My name is Jennifer, she whispered. That pissed him off. Your name is Shut Up When I'm Talking to Satan. Please, she pleaded. Please let me go. I'll do anything you want. I only screw tins, honey, he scoffed. You're a Minnesota 9 at best, even with the chicken cutlets. That was a low blow. Seriously low. He reached into her bra and found the gel pads she used to boost the assets. It's true. I told you I was the one with the real stack. That was too much. Jennifer tried to spit in his face, but it landed in his hair. He smoothed his hair back and said quietly, "I'm going to carve you like a pumpkin. Don't you know what you're dealing with? We're in league with the beast." Then he did what all villains do. He spilled the beans. "Do you know how hard it is to make it as an indie band these days?" he asked, wagging a finger in her face. "There are so many of us, and we're all so damned cute. If you don't get on Letterman or on some retarded soundtrack, you're screwed. We want to do designer drugs and have groupies that have their own groupies. We want stadium tours. We want more. Satan is our only hope. So we got to make a big impression on him, Ginny. We have to butcher you. And then Dirk here is going to wear your face." Dirk looked shocked. "Just kidding about the face thing, Dirk." The scariest thing was that Nikolai was so calm about it all. "Maybe you could just hire a publicist," suggested Jennifer, fighting till the end. "Make some t-shirts or something. Hey, I could be on your street team." Nikolai appeared to consider this for a moment. "You know, that's not a bad idea. I mean, we need publicity, right, guys? Except, nah, I'd rather just slit you open and look at your guts." Then they all laughed. They were all riding high on Nikolai's power trip. Mr. McCrazy had carried his friends right off the deep end of sanity with him. He started reading the ritual again. "With deepest malice we deliver this virgin unto thee." He pulled out a huge gleaming knife. He raised it up in the air and then stopped for a moment to admire his reflection in its blade. "Dude, that's one hot murder weapon," exclaimed Dirk. He had completely gone over to the dark side, obviously. "It's a Bowie knife," said Nikolai. "Nice." Nikolai positioned the knife in the air above Jennifer's body. "Okay, let's do this." She squirmed again, desperately trying to get away. It took all four of them to hold her down this time. "Oh, Ginny, he crooned. They all started singing together as Nikolai started stabbing her. It was incredibly brutal. They stabbed her and beat her and basically made sure she was dead. Like, dead. Chapter 9. Who Put the Fun in Funeral? Jennifer was cleaning underneath her nails with a cuticle stick she had picked up from my dresser, casually relating this horrific tale. Being tortured would make most girls black out or something, but I'm so hardcore. I was with them the whole time. I could feel them gutting up under my ribs, up into my belly, and then right into my heart. He threw the knife away in the waterfall, so that's gone. I stared at her in disbelief. They killed you. I'm here, aren't I? She disagreed, shaking her head. I mean, yeah, she concluded. They went Benihana on me. Should have killed me, but for some reason it didn't. Maybe it did, I whispered. Whatever. Anyway, I don't really remember what happened after that. I just woke up a few hours later and made my way back somehow. Yeah, I remember, I said dryly. How could I forget? I couldn't bring myself to hurt you. I mean, I'm a really good friend, but I felt so hungry. I had to do something. Ever since then, I just somehow knew that I needed to be strong. And when I'm full, like I am right now, I'm like unkillable. I can do stuff like this. She jammed the cuticle stick into her arm and dragged it through her flesh. I jumped. It was super gross. No biggie, she said, totally unfazed. Watch. She pulled out the stick and her arm healed itself before my eyes. I rushed over and touched her skin. There wasn't a mark on her. That's some superhero shit, right? I looked into her eyes. What do you mean, when you're full? She shrugged. You know, full, like full of tasty morsels. But I didn't get it. Well, I didn't want to get it. I shook my head. She wasn't making sense. Tasty morsels of what? I was afraid I knew. Forget it, she said. You'd probably tell on me anyway. Not that anyone would believe you. You always think the world is coming to an end. She rolled her eyes at me like I was a hysterical crybaby just because I actually got upset when people died. But I still had a few questions for her. What about my mom's car? Why did you attack me out there? Why were you covered in blood? You didn't even look human. She patted my arm. You should talk to someone about these disturbing thoughts you're having. We're all concerned, especially Chip. I think he's having second thoughts about you. That did it. Leave, I told her. My, aren't we a see you next Tuesday? Get out, I yelled. She smiled seductively at me. Come on, let me stay the night. We can play boyfriend-girlfriend like we used to. I shrank away from her. With a sigh, she got up from the bed and walked over to my window. She cranked it wide open. What are you doing? I asked. My bedroom is on the second floor. It's not like she could sneak out the window. You told me to leave, so I'm outie 5000. She climbed up onto the windowsill and crouched. See you at school. Then she leaped out the window. I ran over and looked below, but the yard was empty. She was gone. I was starting to believe she did have some freaky superhero powers. The next day I heard about Colin at school. Poor, sad Colin. They found what was left of him at a construction site just outside of town limits. One of those crappy housing developments where every home looks the same, and for some reason the builders think people will want to live in a box just like the ones on either side. A security guard driving through on his patrol saw Colin's car parked out front. Colin had been ripped open and eaten, just like Jonas. No one knows why he was there or who ate his organs. But I was starting to realize that I had a pretty good idea who was enjoying these tasty morsels around town lately. Jennifer had told me that she needed to be full, hadn't she? And it would explain why she looked so crappy after a while, and then all shiny again. It would also explain some of the weird things I'd been feeling lately. I'd been feeling her hunger, her sickness, and her happiness at being satisfied with teen boy meat. I wasn't totally ready to embrace this theory yet, but clues were piling up in the back of my brain, and pretty soon I was going to have to go Nancy Drew on the sitch. They had Colin's funeral at the cemetery next to Our Lady of the Perpetual Blood. Such a fitting name. Neatly swept gravel paths snaked between stately marble monuments. There was a slight dip in the ground at the back of the cemetery, and that's where the ceremony was held. I got there early and waited. I felt responsible. I don't know how I could have stopped her exactly, but I felt like I had failed Colin somehow. His family looked terrible. I didn't blame them. They stood around the grave looking sucker-punched as a small group of us mourners stood off to the side. Some press photographers were there too. The world was going to hear more from Devil's Kettle. We gather here today to celebrate the life of Colin Gray, began the priest, who was plucked from the prime. I heard wailing and sobbing in the distance. I looked up with everyone else and saw several dark figures reach the crest of the hill. A procession of goth kids, including every single last dead girl, solemnly marched single file. They were wearing black capes, chains, fishnets, combat boots, and way too much eyeliner. And every single one of them was weeping. It was like a Greek tragedy, complete with accordion dirge. One girl was scattering red rose petals on the ground. They walked right up to the grave and stood next to the graves. The priest cleared his throat. Are these? Mr. Gray nodded. Colin's friends. A goth boy named Kevin flung himself into the fresh dirt. Colin, take me with you. I belong down there in the dark. Goths are such drama queens. One of the dead girls pulled him up. It was Chloe, I think. No, Kevin, those are just his earthly remains. He's among the dark angels of the realm now. Fly, Colin, fly into the firmament. Chloe lit a bundle of sage and waved the smoke in the air. Mr. Gray gagged on the stink. That chick was seriously mistaken if she thought she knew anything about the dark realm. I myself, however, was beginning to feel like an expert. Kevin addressed Mr. Gray. "Is it cool if we camp here for a few days? We want to commune with his corpse." Mr. Gray's jaw dropped open. Chloe stepped up to Mrs. Gray. "I need to ask you something, Mrs. Gray. Mr. Feely, the school shrink, he said it's really important for me to speak my words." "Young lady, maybe now is not the time," scolded the priest, but Mrs. Gray waved him off. "It's fine," she said. "Okay, so is it true that Colin had a date with Jennifer Check the night he was killed?" Chloe said Jennifer's name like it was a filthy curse word. I covered my face. I couldn't believe she was bringing this up at his funeral, to his mother. "Because Jennifer Check is gross," she continued. "She thinks she's so special just because she's popular and is what society considers attractive. But she's actually just some generic gigabitch who listens to Fergie and chops at Hollister. Also, she has mouth herpes and the other kind." This was news to me, if it was true. Gross. "So, just to confirm, Colin didn't have a date with her, right?" The Grays just stared at the ground. Chloe freaked. "Oh, God, I knew it. That slut." "Amen, sister." Kevin touched her arm and tried to calm her down. Chloe, maybe you should be mad at the person who murdered Colin. All Jennifer Check did was invite him over to watch Aquamarine." Her wailing got louder. "That's worse," she shrieked. And now she was the one on the ground, throwing a toddler's temper tantrum. Mrs. Gray started to weep, covering her face with her hands, and Mr. Gray put his arm around her. "Colin wouldn't have liked this," said Kevin, shaking his head. That's when the real show started. Mrs. Gray's head snapped up, and she glared at Kevin. "Oh, you think so?" she screamed at him, piling on the sarcasm. "Yeah, you're right. I'm pretty sure my son wouldn't have liked being eaten by a cannibal and buried before his 18th birthday. Wow, you must have known him so well." She was waving her arms in the air and spitting. "Jill," said Mr. Gray, trying to pull her back. Kevin was white as a ghost, totally terrified at the harpy he had unleashed. "By the time they found Colin in that God-forsaken house, he looked like lasagna with teeth. I know, I had to identify his remains." Her screaming suddenly switched to a low growl, which was even scarier. "My boy is not in the realm of the undead. He's not flying around in the firmament with magical wings of flame. He's in an overpriced rosewood box that's headed 6 feet downtown." She leaned threateningly into Kevin and screamed into his face. "So you can take your pain and shove it up your ass. I got the monopoly on pain." Then she collapsed, sobbing, into Mr. Gray's arms. I wanted to start clapping, but I figured that would be inappropriate.